Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope your day is starting great. Fall is upon us in our beautiful country of Canada, and this particular pic here was shared by Pierre in the I Choose Canada group. This is the beautiful colors of the Annapolis Valley in Nova Scotia. And Canada, being a northern climate, is experiencing the beautiful change in scenery, these beautiful fall colors appearing all around us. Whereas the United States, more of a southern climate, Americans are not viewing this change yet. They're still witnessing abundant greens and browns still. Now in this video, I'm going to go through a similar crisis that both our countries are facing with respect to China. And I'm going to explain that although the situation may seem similar, it's actually very, very different in how China is approaching the situation. And I'm interested in your comments in the comment section. Which country is going about things in the best way? Now let me point out the similarities first. And this is a headline regarding the United States from CNN. Tidal wave of problems. With harvest here, Trump's trade war pushes some U.S. farmers to the brink. And they're speaking about the trade war between the United States and China and how U.S. farmers are finding themselves now in a dire situation right around harvest time. When they were expecting to sell soybeans to the Chinese, the U.S. has always been one of the top markets for Chinese imports of soybeans. But the trade war that Donald Trump started with China has now resulted in the Chinese importing virtually no soybeans this year. And that's left farmers in the U.S. in a dire situation. The headline with respect to Canada reads fairly similarly. Southwestern Ontario canola farmers brace for impact of Chinese tariffs. And in a similar way, our farmers now find themselves in a dire situation because Canada was one of the top suppliers of canola to China. And this year, China is set to buy virtually no canola from Canada. So two similar situations, but completely different in how they started and how the Chinese are approaching the US versus Canada. Let me explain that now. With respect to the United States, reported here on Forbes business section, China appears to be shutting down purchases of U.S. soybeans, shutting them down completely. In fact, China has not bought one single bushel of U.S. soybeans in the past few months. And the reason they're doing this is to show the Americans their power. This all started when Donald Trump escalated the trade war between China and the US. Do you remember when he had raised tariffs to over 100%, virtually stopping trade between the two countries? And now they've sort of settled down to, I think the US has 35% tariffs on Chinese imports, and the Chinese have a 10% import tax on US goods. They've settled there. But the Chinese were pretty pissed off about the whole trade war starting in the first place. And rather than hit back with high tariffs on U.S. farmers, they've just decided to pivot. They've just shown their flexibility, and they've just simply sourced the soybeans from someone else. They're buying most of their soybeans now from Brazil. And basically, they've turned their back on the United States, and it's not just a temporary thing. You can think of this now as the market for U.S. soybean exports to China is gone. It's gone, and it probably won't come back. They've set up new trade routes, new supply chains. They're importing from Brazil now. They have a good customer now in Brazil, and they've negotiated with them and are probably looking forward to many years of doing business with another like-minded country. This has crushed the U.S. farmers, especially the ones that have soybean crops ready to be harvested now, they have no one to sell to. The U.S. produces a lot more soybeans than they can consume, always counting on being able to export it. And their top buyer in the past was China. Well, no more. The situation with Canada is a little bit different. And here's an article from Yahoo Finance, and the headline reads, China delays final ruling in canola dispute with top supplier Canada. China's action on Canadian canola exporters is a retaliation. They have retaliated against Canada because Canada joined the United States and imposed 100% tariffs on the import of Chinese EVs. That pissed off the Chinese. So what they did is they launched an investigation on our practices of producing canola. And in their preliminary finding of their investigation, they found that Canada is using unfair trade practices in our production of canola. Now, of course, this is all nonsense. It's a political tactic. And what the Chinese have done, and this is very important, they've launched this investigation. They found that Canada's using unfair trade practices, and they've hit our canola exports with a 75% import tax, which virtually cuts off the import of canola into China from Canada. So they're pivoting to other suppliers, Australia, for example. But they've delayed the final ruling on this investigation and given Canada time to negotiate with them and to discuss things. Here's a key paragraph in this article that explains China on Friday prolonged its probe into Canadian canola imports, buying 6 more months for negotiations that could ease a year-long trade dispute sparked by Ottawa's tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Beijing, the world's largest importer of canola, imposed preliminary duties of 75.8% on Canadian canola seed imports in August. A final ruling could result in a different rate or overturn the decision. So in a similar way, both our countries, the United States and Canada, are in a crisis. Now, how are the two countries going about trying to resolve this? Well, reported here in Politico, Trump says he'll use tariff revenue to bail out U.S. farmers. A bailout, a band-aid solution, because China, as a customer for U.S. soybeans, that market is gone. And undaunted and undeterred by the fact that he's destroyed a major industry in his country, he's decided to try and destroy some more industries. Trump promises new tariff blitz aimed at movies and furniture. So, of course, his strategy is, when faced with bad results and bad news, escalate, escalate, escalate. As opposed to Canada's approach, reported here on CBC News recently, Premier Scott Moe returns from China, hopeful for progress on canola tariffs. Premier Moe said that it's likely that other federal ministers will be in China very soon to continue speaking with officials. Prime Minister Carney could have an opportunity to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping at global summits later this year. I would say engage, 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 as opposed to escalate, escalate, escalate. He also said Ottawa's decision to pause its electric vehicle sales mandate also shows Canada is open to moving forward in a broader discussion in a pragmatic and strategic way. And while Moe has previously said that he would like Ottawa to remove the electric vehicle tariff, he said Monday that Canada must find the right balance in dealing with the United States and China. And that statement was a big tell by Premier Scott Moe when he says we have to balance our approach with China and the United States when it comes to removing these tariffs on imports of Chinese EVs, because that would certainly hurt the United States. Canada is one of the top markets for U.S. exports of automobiles. This is something that our federal government, I'm sure, is using as a negotiating tool, as a card that we hold when next year we start renegotiating the USMCA or CUSMA. This gives us some leverage. It's a delicate three-way negotiation, and that's probably why Scott Moe has kind of backed off by just demanding that we remove the tariff on Chinese EVs, and he's softened his tone somewhat. He's obviously talked with Mark Carney, and they're aligned and they're working together. And we have to view this retaliation technique that China has used on our canola exports as sort of a retaliation attached to an olive branch. Here, we're retaliating and imposing import taxes on your canola exports, but we're also extending this olive branch. We're doing it in a way that leaves open the door for discussions and trying to sort this out. Whereas with the Americans, it was a retaliation stick with a brick attached to it, hammering them over the head saying, the deal's over, we're not buying any more of your soybeans. And one of the key differences in China's approach is that China is actively trying to replace the United States and become the world's dominant economic power. And pivoting from the United States and solidifying and strengthening relationships with other countries, especially countries in the BRICS alliance. Brazil is the B in BRICS. China is going to take every opportunity to look after its own self-interest. If it can benefit itself and at the same time hurt the United States, it will. Canada represents a much smaller player for China. But as I've said before, and as Mark Carney said before, Canada has everything that the world, including China, wants. We have a country about the same size as China with, what is it, about 4% of the population? And I think I'm being generous there. We have less than 4% of China's population and just as abundant minerals and resources. And China will always be ready to export and import and trade with any country on earth. Our Prime Minister is just returning from a trip from the UK. And while the Conservatives here in Canada have been critical of Carney's frequent foreign trips, saying they aren't generating tangible outcomes and the Prime Minister should be more focused on domestic issues like crime. Now, while in the UK, Mark Carney met with 4 different Prime Ministers: Prime Minister of the UK, Prime Minister of Iceland, Prime Minister of Australia, and Prime Minister of Spain. He also met with infrastructure investors from Britain, Europe, Asia, and Australia Saturday morning and said he's looking for how Canada can better attract global capital. Now, despite what the Conservatives said, you know they're just going to be negative about it. Mark Carney's wasting his time going on these trips and he should stay home and worry about crime. Let me point out the reality. Our Prime Minister has somewhat of a superpower in the world. And that superpower is he knows everybody. He knows all the top business leaders around the world because he's been the governor of the Bank of Canada. He's been the governor of the Bank of England. He also knows all the leaders in Europe. He can, at a moment's notice, pick up the phone and arrange a meeting and walk into a room with some of the top leaders in the world. And they all know him and they all respect him and they're all willing to talk to him. And he can represent Canada in that forum that he's comfortable with. He's a very serious man, and I'm sure he's not just going there to shoot the shit. Now imagine, on the other hand, this guy here picking up the phone and calling the British Prime Minister and saying, hey, I'm thinking of coming to London. Do you think we can get together, call a couple of other Prime Ministers from a few other countries and some of the key business leaders in Europe? Can you gather them up? Well, I say, I'm sorry for the interruption, Your Majesty, but there's a Pierre from Canada that says he'd like to come and visit. I think he's interested in coming over and enjoying some afternoon tea with me. Oh dear. Pity, isn't it? I just really can't imagine us in that situation. But let me ask you again, as I did at the beginning of the video, to leave your comments in the comment section. Which country do you think is approaching things in a better way? I think the situation that we're in with China is similarly serious for both countries, but the US approach is to escalate, and Canada's approach is to engage. And my point of view is I'm completely happy with our Prime Minister and our premiers jet-setting across the world and talking to as many contacts, as many business leaders, as many foreign country leaders as they can to expand Canada's reach and open as many new trade possibilities as they can to US-proof our economy for the future. And Canadians are not that stupid to believe that it's one thing or the other. Our leaders are perfectly capable of engaging with world economic issues as well as domestic issues. It's not one or the other. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. If you want to support my work on a monthly basis, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will catch you all on the next one.